This week's guest is Graham Nicholls, an author, new media artist, peaceful spiritual activist, and most importantly, for tonight's show, an expert in out-of-body experiences. With over 100 journeys outside of his body, he is now helping others through a series of online workshops and retreats to experience the phenomena for themselves. A very warm welcome to the Spirit Guides Network Radio. It's lovely to have you on. Welcome you as a guest.
Thank you for having me.
It's fascinating to have you on. I know you're going to talk about out-of-body experiences, and you've been fortunate enough to have been experiencing these from a very young age, from what I understand. You've had quite a few of them as well. Before we get going on those, I'd just like to sort of get some context around your background and how this all started to happen to you, really, and what sort of got you on your journey.
Well, I suppose the first thing that ever happened was when I was very young. I was maybe between 5 and 7, not exactly sure what my age was, but I woke up in the middle of the night, walked out into my hallway of the flat I grew up in. I grew up in a tower block in central London. Not your archetypal place to have strange experiences, but I walked out into the hallway and there was a human figure standing in the doorway that led out onto the landing of the flats, just standing there kind of looking at me. And as you can imagine, this was pretty scary for a very young child. So I, didn't know how to react at all and was totally terrified, really. I remember I sort of dropped to my knees and was kind of holding on to the ground almost to try and get some sense of stability and safety from the surface, the hardness kind of thing. And then essentially I looked away from it and I looked back and it was still there and it just didn't disappear. And then eventually I just lost consciousness, or my memory is pretty vague on what happened after that. But from that point on, it was like everything had kind of changed. And when I was at school and when I was around other kids, I always had this sense of there being more to the world than meets the eye. I didn't know exactly what that was at the time, but there was a real sense that there was something, and it was always with me. And then when I got to about 12, I started having these, I don't know whether to call them out-of-body experiences, but they were very similar to what people describe classically in out-of-body experiences, but slightly different, because what would happen is I would lay down to go to sleep, and then I would find myself floating vertically rather than horizontally, which is how most people describe the experience. I would be floating vertically just a few feet off the ground. And it would just last for a few moments, and then I would be conscious in my body again. And at the time, I kind of didn't know what to make of it, so I just had no reference points. My mum and dad weren't religious. There were no books in the house on anything like that. So it was just another strange experience that I didn't know how to understand or how to contextualize. So what happened after that was I saw a TV program, I think maybe 3 or 4 months afterwards, which talked about astral projection. I'd never heard the term before, but astral projection seemed to describe something very similar to what I was experiencing. So I basically went out into central London to a big bookshop there, looked for all the books, and I found one book called Out-of-Body Experiences, a handbook by Janet Lee Mitchell. It was a parapsychologist, so it was from a very scientific kind of background. So I read that, and in the back of the book there were a few suggestions in terms of techniques and ways that you could maybe try and have an experience for yourself. So from that book, essentially, I pieced together a technique and managed, after, it was quite a while, it took me about 6 months, but after 6 months I had my first consciously induced experience. And this was more like a classic description of an out-of-body experience, where I found myself lift out of my body with quite a jolt, actually. It was almost like a shock had gone through my body. And then I lifted out maybe 4 feet above my body. And then I was just looking straight down at myself. My body appeared almost greyed out, almost like a black and white photograph.
How did that make you feel to see your body? I mean, did you initially think that you'd passed over?
Not really, because it didn't seem like me. It was a strange feeling, because I was looking at an image that looked like me, and I knew was me in a sense, but I felt like me was the body that was floating in the air. So no, it wasn't really scary or anything. It was just strange. I remember looking at myself and thinking, is that me or isn't that me? And kind of recognizing my features and realizing that it was me, but that it seemed somehow other, somehow alien, because it wasn't animated and it wasn't reacting to what I was doing. What I was doing was all within this second body, this kind of energy body that seemed to be floating above myself. So yeah.
So could you feel? Yeah. I mean, if you imagine being in the body, could you still feel sensory inputs? Like, was you aware of your heart beating or breathing, that kind of thing?
No, not at all. It was it seemed completely separate to me. There was no real, especially in that experience. I don't recall any connection at all. It was like they were completely separate things. And like I say, my second body, the out-of-body body, seemed much more me in the real body. But unfortunately, in that experience, I couldn't move very much. It felt like I was kind of fixed to the spot almost. So I couldn't really see much around me.
Yeah, I mean, really interesting to know. Obviously, as you progressed in this, you're able to have this amazing freedom where you can go anywhere. You can see anything. You could probably go out and see the planets in the solar system, or you could visit other places on planet Earth that you wouldn't normally be able to get to.
Yeah, well, I have had a few experiences like that. One fairly recent one where I was in what I now know was the upper atmosphere of the Earth, looking down at the rotating planet. Basically, just I could see the atmosphere kind of going off into the distance with light kind of coming through it, and I could look down at the oceans and the continents slowly kind of rotating below me. So yeah, that was quite an amazing experience, and I've had other ones earlier on. That was fairly recent.
Obviously, you've got some works that's come up in London in September. Do you have techniques that people can use, that they can use to quite simply go into that state of mind? I mean, I must admit, when I was younger, my brother had an out-of-body experience, and it was just completely spontaneous. He was we just come back from holiday, and he was tired. He was lying down on the bed. I was in my bedroom, and then he just, next thing you know, he was floating, and he was literally a few inches away from the ceiling. He turned around, he could see the body on the bed, and then curiously he just decided to come through the walls and visit me in my bedroom. And that was the whole reason I got into this whole spiritual thing, because I bought loads of books on it myself. He didn't seem to care. And I spent many months trying to achieve it, and then the most I got was just, I came halfway out and I kept bouncing backwards and forwards really quickly, but it was almost like a fight to get out, and and then I just shot back in, out, and it was quite frightening really. My heartbeat was going really, really fast, and after that I kind of gave up, because it just felt like something was stopping me. So
well, I think there are a lot of unconscious fears built into the experience that maybe people aren't aware of. So even when they're going through the techniques, and even though in a conscious sense people can be very